to the medium's book, you are still in the item of visual manifestations, in which Kardec addresses many ways that you can actually see spirits. Just to recap, we can see spirits through physical phenomena that you require the presence, not really the presence, but it will require a medium of physical effect to provide ectoplasm for a spirit to render itself visible to our physical eyes, therefore the physical phenomena. We see spirits in our dreams. We see spirits for in mediumistic trance, being a light or a deep trance. Mediums have ability to see spirits. And of course, I'm always going to come back to this. When you say that you see spirits, in reality you are seeing the perispirit of the spirit. They usually you present with a form in the form of a human, because that perispirit is formed in physical bodies. So when you see a spirit, we see the perispirit, not the essence itself. Okay. Um, Again, on dreams is a normal state that all of us go through, remember it or not. We all disconnect ourselves partially from the physical body, and we are able to have experiences in the spiritual dimension, and those experiences with spirits who, of course, we can see them there, interact them in a very palpable way. But it's not mediumship, it's a normal, completely state, and it's not a trance as well. Okay? So today we are on item or question 13, on the questions that Kardec proposes to the spirits. And again, I'm not exactly sure who are the spirit providing those answers. Number 13, who's going to read for us?
Okay, I'm available.
We
Okay.
appreciate. Thank you.
Okay, Elmo. Number 13. Are the persons we see while dreaming always who they appear to be? They are almost always the same ones. Your spirit goes to meet them, or they come to meet you.
Thanks.
Okay.
I know that this answer this question projects in our mind immediately quite a few questions, but just to wait because Kardec will have make those questions to us. But in the simple way to say this, it's if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, walks like a duck, what is it? 99% will be a duck. Okay, there is always exception to the rules. So if you see the spirit that appears to be your grandma, sounds like your grandma, has the same affection to you as your grandma, likely is your grandma that you saw in your dreams, or in any other way that you see her spirit. Okay, likely it is. We have a tendency, as João was just reading, to try to complicate things. You know, I mean, if in your dreams you see someone who was just like your grandma, present herself as your grandma, looks like her, sounds like her, yeah, it is. Now, the next question is the one that I bet everybody has thought of it immediately.
Okay. Couldn't deceptive spirits take on the appearance of someone dear to us in order to mislead us? They take on fantastic appearances only in order to have fun at your expense, but they are matters that they are not allowed to play with.
I think this answer is very comforting to us.
Mhm.
Is very essential to us to understand that yes, indeed, spirits have the ability with their mind and the malleability of the perispirit to change its form, to change its shape, having the know-how and have the permission. You saw that before. There is always a permission. They can present us something else than what they really are. But there is a limit to everything. There are matters that they are not allowed to play with. Okay, so in general, there is always an exception to the rules, and we're not going to work with exceptions. We're going to work with the general. Spirits are not allowed to pretend to be someone else. Can we imagine the danger that it causes if that was the case? Individuals that we regard with tremendous affection comes in a dream or comes in on any kind of spiritual vision as being someone completely different that we think that they were, someone that we really admire, comes presents to you someone absolutely abominable. It would be extremely complicated, make our life extremely difficult. We would lose faith in everything. So there is a limit of what spirits are allowed to do. Um, we go to the questions of free will, and again, free will, I think, good luck, Sean, is one of the most complicated topics to discuss because,
Elmo, can I say something about the items 13 and 14, or do
sure,
you
of
wanna?
course.
Yeah, the very few instances where I had messages from family members, it was in my case based on smell. It was their smell that first manifested in their name, in their persons, and their name, and their presence, and then the message. And it was in all of the instances, I'm saying maybe 4 or 5 times in my life that I remember that I had this. And also messages from high elevated spirits on Mondays that you remember. And even when I'm in the room getting the messages, high elevated spirits and people from my family circle, they came very instantly, like for a flash. It's almost like it's something that we always heard many times. They're not here. They're not. Their purpose is not to be doing messages to us. There's a lot of work that they have to work on themselves, and there's a lot of work to be done on that side. So when they do appear, it's I think it always happens in these moments that I mentioned to you. It's like for a moment it gives a message which was very simply necessary those 5 times, and that's it, and they're done. So for me, that validated as being something that was legitimate from somebody from my family that I knew, because it had the truth to the reality.
And when, let's use the case of there being family members that you that have seen them before, that have met them while they were incarnate, you had no doubt that that was the person that they mentioned they were, correct? let's
Correct,
say let's
absolutely.
say if you knew, let's say your grandfather were alive, and then your grandfather present to you uh, uh, after his discarnation, when presented to you, you have no doubt that that is your grandfather, correct?
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah, it
this
was
is
in my
very
case was my
important.
grandmother, and it was this whole thing about the smell, and it was the whole package at once. The smell, the memory, the face, the presence, the clothing, the way of walking, of coming back, always coming from behind, always coming from behind. It's almost like, and you don't want to turn because by the time that you even think about that, this whole thing is gone.
Interesting. Yeah. Every time that we hear of individuals had seen loved ones from the past, they would have absolutely no doubt. Even non-spiritists would relate to the experience in the spiritual world in a dream or something like that. They will come and say, "Yeah, I was with such and such. I was with my uncle in dreams." But even people who are not spirituals, people do not even believe in spirituals, but of course has to believe that life continues after of the death of the physical body. They are certain that they dream with that individual, and they have no doubt in their mind that this was indeed they saw was that person they are talking about. There is no doubt.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Because there is a limit. Can you imagine if, let's say, if Fabio was an ability to see spirits from time to time, if another malicious spirits present to him pretending to be his grandma, would create a tremendous problem for Fabio to have a relationship that whatever he has with his grandma. So there is a limit to as much as spirits can do also.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, it was just one with my grandmother, one with a cousin, one with another cousin. It's not like they repeat. It's just like it was for the moment, and it's not even a relationship. It's based entirely on the need at that moment, and the relationship actually, the familial relationship and whatnot. But you know what I mean.
Yep.
Okay. Continue, Alma.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Since thought is a kind of evocation, we can understand that it can induce a spirit to appear. But why is it that the persons whom we think about the most and whom we most ardently desire to see again almost never appear to us in our dreams, while we often see others who do not interest us in the least and whom we never think about? It is not always possible for spirits to show themselves visibly, even in dreams, and in spite of your desire to see them. Causes apart from their will may prevent them. Besides, it is almost always a trial which even your most ardent desire cannot avert. As for individuals who do not interest you, it is possible that they are thinking of you, even though you are not thinking of them. Moreover, you have no idea about relationships in the spirit world, where you might meet up with a multitude of close, old, and new acquaintances, whom you may have no memory of at all while awake. When there is no means of verifying visions or apparitions, we can almost certainly treat them as being only hallucinations. However, when they are confirmed by the circumstances, we cannot attribute them to our imagination. Such are, for example, apparitions at the time of death, while asleep or awake, involving persons whom we have not been thinking about and who, by various signs, have come to reveal the absolutely unexpected circumstances of their passing. In such instances, we have seen horses rear up and bark before apparitions that frighten their riders. Imagination may be something that humans are endowed with, but the same cannot be said for animals. Moreover, if the images we see while dreaming are always the result of our awakening concerns, that would not explain why we hardly ever dream of the matters that we have been thinking about the most.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Um, I don't. Since it is the book, likely it's true for most people. It's true for me that people that like to see my dreams, people that love to have received some kind of information who are now in the spiritual world. basically very, very, very rare. They will appear in my dreams. I will have a more palpable interaction with them beyond telepathic, beyond the thought. And people and individuals that I will wake up say, "Who is that person? Who? Why that person was in my dream? I don't recollect again." Since it's placed over here, I'm consider myself very much of an average person. I have to agree that that happened with most of us as well.
Mm.
I think one of the thing is be careful what you wish for, right? It's a true case, and not always in spirits are available to come to us. Doesn't mean that it stop loving us. Doesn't mean they stop liking us. Um, doesn't mean that they are in the deepest of the lower zone and can't come to us. It doesn't mean that at all. It not doesn't mean that they are at a very high level of elevated spirits that they cannot lower themselves to come to us. Doesn't mean that also. Likely the spirits that have relationship with us are pretty much at our level. A little more, a little less, of course. It's not everybody exactly at the same level, but spirits are busy. Spirits have many projects up there. We have many projects over here. And it's not always possible, perhaps not always the best thing for us. Okay, to know that our loved one is having some kind of difficulty will not help us. Perhaps we will not help them. And when it comes to the spirits that the individuals that we meet in our dreams, that you have no present idea of who they are, maybe someone significant in our spiritual life as an eternal spirit. How can we tell who do we really know in as an eternal spirit? We have assumed that we have had quite a number of reincarnations, and throughout that many reincarnations, we have to have a father and a mother at least. With that goes along perhaps spouses, perhaps children's of previous incarnation, bosses, friends, enemies. So there is lots of relationships there that at the present we are not aware of it, but then they, being the spiritual world, are able to maintain the knowledge of us, to maintain the likes and dislikes towards us the same way, and at time to time, we're going to have the opportunity to interact with them in the spiritual world. So likely individuals that we see that do not recognize are somehow someone who is part of our lives that we are not aware of. And our life, I mean, as a term spirit, if not directly relate to this reincarnation, definitely to some other reincarnations. And in the comments of Kardec, there are facts. That's was the reason I asked Fabio if they're absolutely sure that what he sees is what is exactly it is. He says no doubt. We when those things happens to us, we 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 are sure that it happened to us. If anyone else seeks to doubt, it's their own problem. He he uses hallucinations. But even if it's hallucinations, even if let's say, if an altered state of consciousness, secondary to chemicals, to drug abuse, medical management, to very high fever, post-ictal, meaning just after a seizure, and I have some hallucinations and I see individuals, How can you say that those individuals does not truly exist? If I am in an altered state of consciousness and I'm seeing and I describe individuals right there, why am I assuming that these are not really spirits? I just had last week um, one patient who just had a intracranial bleed, and after that he went for surgery. He had an infection, so he was quite sick. He was definitely delirious. But for 2 days, he keeps calling names and telling us that one discarnated sister. Later, I was able to find out that it was discarnated sister. He keeps calling for her. He keeps seeing her in the room. Who am I to say that that is just a pure hallucination, just his imagination? There was no sister there.
Mm.
I know, after the fact, I know that he had a sister. Then I'm not going to say their name because it's to be a HIPAA violation. But that individual was interact with a sister that is discarnate. That magically speaking, he was hallucinating. Now, who am I to say, as an spiritist, there was not a sister right there? That he was seeing that sister in an altered state of consciousness that allow him to be somewhat farther from this physical body and allows him to see the spiritual world. And that happens especially with at the time of death in the domains of mediumship. There's relates of that when we are ready to go, we may give us the opportunity to go and visit a relative far out in another state and say, "Hey, I'm ready to go." And and that person incarnate wake up the next morning, receive the news that a loved one passed away in a different state, and you say, "It's interesting that she came to me or he came to me and told me that he was going." It was strange. It has happened. It's been documented many, many times. Those kind of things, and there is no reason for us to doubt. When you imagine think of animals here, I'm not going to go into details because I don't know if horses can actually see spirits and get frightened or not, and I don't know if I'm ready to take or that the animals has this ability to see things beyond us. I'm sure animals has ability to perceive things way beyond us. I don't know, vision is one of them. So I'll just leave that alone. I'm not saying that they cannot, okay? I'm saying that I not have enough in my bag to say yes or no if the animals, a horse can or cannot see a spirit. I absolutely convinced that they can perceive. Seeing, I don't know. Okay?
Okay.
Question, comments? All right, 16.
Okay. Why do certain visions happen more frequently during illness? They happen just as frequently in the state of perfect health. But during illness, the material ties loosen and the weakness of the body allows more freedom to the spirit, which then more easily communicates with other spirits.
Okay, that's very important. In many illnesses, your physical body is somewhat debilitated, and that state of debilitation, it loosens up a little bit. It ties with the spiritual world.
Mm.
And with loose tie from of the physical body to the perispirit, the perispirit has greater freedom to experience the spiritual world, and therefore has a greater likelihood of seeing things that pertain to the spiritual world, including spirits. And especially if in those illnesses, alter the state of consciousness, then even more, it's a very great likelihood that those illnesses will allow greater freedom of the perispirit to see things pertaining to the spiritual world. I always remember a patient, and I said that before, that would they describe the room where she was with such a clear description of the place, completely different of the hospital room, of course, and would describe the cats by the window and everything else, that she was in that room as an spiritist. Nobody could make that up. I mean, we are not that creative the way she was able to describe the room that she was. And the most interesting thing is that she knew at the same time that she was in an altered state of consciousness. That those where she was there, it was not where she really physically was, but spiritually she knew that she was in that place, and she could describe the cats in the window and the trees outside, everything, which is completely different from the hospital room where she was. Okay.
Okay.
Question, comments?
Hey, Elmo.
Mm-hmm.
Can a person or a person in general, media or not, perceive that he's on this outer state of conscience? Meaning, is there something that it changes at physical level that the person, okay, something happened or is happening, and then she start to perceive this in the visions or something?
Some cases, yes. Some cases, individuals know that they are not themselves, so to say. In other cases, individuals are completely denied that they are in an altered state. They are absolutely denied that they are having a vision that is not the reality of the patients now. It's in both cases. Yeah, but some people, they will know that they are in an altered state.
And if you
way
are
that
seeing,
that you see people get drunk and they deny they are drunk, and people get drunk and they know they are drunk. They accept the fact that they are drunk. And the people that drink 3 liters of vodka say, no, I'm totally sober, and completely deny it.
yeah, I've experienced a little bit of both, so just a little bit. But
Don't we all?
yeah, those days. Okay, so but I'm asking because so if a person or medium is seeing spirits or seeing the spiritual world in whatever level is there, and so there's no other way around besides being in an altered state of conscience. There's no like be totally conscious and just close your eyes and see the spirits or the spiritual realm, right?
Yeah, again, I mean, you see spirit in many different ways, in many different types of trances. One of them is a mediumistic trance. An experience, a medium who knows that he or she is a medium, place oneself in a mediumistic trance, and I see spirits is very aware that it's seeing spirits, and very aware that it is in a mediumistic trance, based on the fact that that individuals know that they are mediums, and they know that they're placing themselves on a mediumistic trance. Can it happen with individuals? And I bet it does. Individuals who are ostensive mediums go into those small temporary trances, see spirits, but are completely unaware of it. It's possible. Not all mediums know that they are mediums.
Yeah, because it seems that it's so subtle that you're not in a trance. You just close your eyes and something is happening.
That's
Very, I mean, I don't know. It might change from medium to medium. Some medium might change the shift or something. But it seems that it's like when you're not in trance and then you close your eyes and start to imagine things, and not necessarily is a spiritual world. It's just your mind projecting whatever you're thinking with your eyes closed.
yeah. Then you are describing that to be your imagination. That's fine, but it could be also clairvoyance. We're talking about individuals who are actually seeing spirits, and it could be the state of clairvoyance in which you basically see with your eyes of the soul, but you're not gonna call it a mediumship because there is not an interaction there.
Thank you.
I think it's important, Elmo, to mention for those that have watched the Art of Surviving Death, there is one of the chapters that half of it is related to these individuals that are going through sickness or are weak and have experiences in seeing relative ones or dead loved ones and things like that. And so it's pretty common even outside those in spiritism that these experiences are seen all over and they're experienced all over.
It is very common. It has nothing to do with spiritism, but spiritism does explain it. The only thing spiritism is explain the phenomena.
Of course.
Yeah, but it's extremely common. It's yes, and it's happening everywhere, in anywhere. We are privileged with the potential to understand what is happening.
Yeah, why I was watching, I was thinking exactly that. Wow, how much they would be helped with just a little bit of spiritist knowledge. Right? Just a little bit, not much.
Yep.
So when the a spirit or the spiritual world, it's let's use the word showing images or whatever is happening, and you have more like a group of people seeing, a group of mediums or a group of people, whatever, then everyone that has that ability to see, we're not talking about materialization, I'm talking about people that have the ability to see the spiritual world will see as well, right?
No. No. It would be a group of 10 mediums, and just one will see it, because just one is focused on that. It's been presented just one of them. There is actually in the method of mediumship in which they were all in the same room, listening to the same spirit, and each one of the mediums was describing a different scenario of the spiritual world. Completely different. So no, the mediums may not all see what one medium is seeing.
Oh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay.
Okay, continue.
Yep.
Okay, 17. Spontaneous apparitions seem to occur more often in certain countries. Are the members of some cultures more gifted than others at receiving these manifestations? Have you made a historical registration of every apparition? Apparitions, noises, and all other manifestations occur equally all over the world, but they display their own particular characteristics according to the cultures among which they occur. For example, Among those where writing is not very widespread, there are no writing mediums. Among others, they abound. Also, among the former, manifestations involving noises and movements of objects are more frequent than intelligent communications, which are less appreciated and sought after.
Thanks.
Mhm.
So one may ask, what will be the value of psychography in an environment that no one can write and read? Does that
Yes.
make much sense, right? A
Exactly.
psychophony would be much more significant.
Mhm.
To imagine, to imagine, to believe that some places have the benefits of those interactions with the spiritual world more than others is to kind of give preferential treatment to one group more than to others. It is important to see here the different cultures throughout the world, and you see that among some groups, some cultures, some, when I use the word countries, I don't want to use the word countries, I like to use the word cultures here. Individuals are more free to talk about those experiences. Another place, individual will be constrained, so to say, to relate to those experiences, to talk about with fear of end up in jail in some parts of the world, be labeled as crazy, be put aside as someone that I don't want to have anything to do with this guy, with that gal, because those things that he says or she says. And in some other part of the world, you'll be much more natural for someone to share those experiences. And therefore, when you say, oh, things happen over there more than the other place. No, perhaps things have happened the same amount, the same frequency, but in one place we are free to talk about, and the other place we keep it for ourselves. So if you do any statistics of it, it seems like one person has more than the other. One place has more than the other, but that would not be the case. We all are incarnated spirits. And everywhere you go, there will be discarnate spirits, and there is in all cultures relationships between the incarnate and the discarnate world. But in some cultures, we are free to talk about. In some cultures, we accept it as being a natural thing, even if you don't really understanding scientifically as Spiritism explains. But it's a commonplace in other places of the world. We don't want to talk about it, even if it happens to us, out of fear of many causes. It is interesting when people do studies of reincarnation, individuals that remember reincarnation. Most of the time is in parts of the world with cultures who are more comfortable with the topic of reincarnation. It's more frequent. Um, Ian Stevenson's book has most of the related from Indian and places where the topic of reincarnation is not a taboo, it's not something fearful. Okay, comments? 18.
Why do
Mute, Soraya.
apparitions, okay, yes.
That's good.
Why do apparitions occur more at night? Mightn't this show that they are the effect of silence and darkness upon one's imagination? For the same reason you see the stars at night and not in full daylight. Intense lighting can eclipse a delicate apparition. Nevertheless, it is wrong to suppose that night has something special about it in this regard. Question those who have seen apparitions, and you will find that most have actually occurred during the day. The phenomenon of apparitions are much more frequent and common than one might think, but many persons do not reveal them either because they fear being ridiculed or because they attribute them to illusion. If they seem to occur more abundantly among certain cultures, it is because such cultures have more carefully preserved their correct or erroneous traditions, which are almost always exaggerated by a fascination for the extraordinary in areas that are more or less disposed to them. Furthermore, credulity sees supernatural effects in the most ordinary phenomenon, the silence of solitude, the steep slope of ravens, the rustle of trees, the roar of storms, the echo from mountains, the fantastic shapes of clouds, shadows, and rods. Anything can lead itself to deluding simple and naively imaginative people who re-encounter in good faith what they have seen or believe they have seen. However, alongside fiction, there is reality, and a serious study of Spiritism can set people free from the foolish accessories of superstition.
Again, as we started in the first part, Kardec brings it up here. They have a tendency to complicate things. Most of us will have experience of seeing a spirit at one point or another. You recognize it being a spirit or not. Most of us will have an experience of a clairvoyant event and see something pertaining to the spiritual world, understanding it or not. I think the reason we are more likely to have those be sure of those perceptions, those visual perceptions at night, is because that's the time that our mind is less distracted. That you are busy at work during the day, or you are driving, or you are running around. Since today are always running behind, trying to catch up. You don't have time to pay attention to the spiritual world, most of us. And at night, when finally we settle, we have those few minutes for yourself and relax, then we are more likely to allow yourself to have those perceptions. But doesn't mean that won't happen during the day. The word apparitions Kardec's using here, don't think this is apparition as a physical phenomenon, okay? It's spirits appearing to us, to one of us, okay? They can happen during the day, they will happen during the day. Individuals who are very aware of it, who are very cautious to pay attention to those details, you see, you reveal that it happens during the day, at night, happens all the time. I personally think that at night is the time that we can settle down a little bit more, relax in the comfort of our home or somewhere else, and be more likely to pay attention to those things and identify that vision as something pertaining to the spiritual world, pertaining to the spirit. Then during our day, they are always running, always trying to catch up. And again, the spiritual, the cultural factor here takes tremendous factor in our mind. We are likely to see the spiritual world according to our culture, or according to what is being taught to us. If you go to the Amazon basin right now and ask the Indians how would be the spiritual world, they would not present as being looking like New York City. They have no idea. It would be something pertaining to their world, to their environment. And if we now, a spiritist, asking what's the idea of the spiritual world, you'd likely remember of things of Nosso Lar and say things related to those experiences that we have had. As someone in China, perhaps you have some vision spiritual worlds completely different. And we could get together, one of us, an Indian from the Amazon basins and a Chinese medium, put all three together, and the same medium, the same spirit appears to us, and we will describe the scenario where the spirit is completely differently.
Mm.
And all three would be right.
Yeah, so when you, because we have our five senses here, so we can, our brain can form image. You touch it, smell it, or you see it, you hear. When you are quote unquote seeing the spiritual realm, you're not using any of that sense. You're using, I don't know what you call the other sense to do that. And I imagine that would be the same when you have like when we all have. I think we had like an intuition. That's like a thought that comes out of nowhere, and then you process. Are all those things processed in our brain in order to form the images and the thoughts, or in case of the spiritual things, they are bypassed that? And what would be the process on that then?
As a discarnate spirit, you have a perispirit that will be pretty much similar with the physical body, because that's how we identify ourselves, right? Imagine that now one of us is incarnate and end up in the spiritual world. And we come to the realization that you are in the spiritual world. How do you think we're gonna see ourselves? That's the one identity that we have of ourselves right now. I can only see myself the way I am. Two eyes, nose, mouth, gray hair, and this and that. How you see myself as I identify myself, right? Even if I want to change myself in someone else, likely I won't be able to do it. Okay, so we have this identity that shapes our perispirit pretty much the way that our physical body is right now. Okay, and likely for me to see something in the spiritual world as this kind of spirit, I will imagine that I'm using the eyes of my perispirit. In order to speak, I would have to use the mouth of my perispirit. But in reality, and I don't know, I can go beyond that. The spirit tells that with the spirit, we sense with the whole perispirit. When we see with the whole perispirit, meaning that we don't have any specific organ of a vision, even though I identify and so accustomed to see with eyes in the spiritual world only with the perispirit, our senses is integrated in the whole perispirit. And I don't know that anything beyond that. How is that? Okay. But it's obvious that we can understand that we don't have those specific sensorial organs. Okay. So when we are in a state of some type of trance, that are seeing spirit now incarnate, and we see with the eyes of the soul, so to say, we are seeing the same way as if you are discarnate. The whole perispirit is having that sensation being expressed as vision, being expressed as smell, whatever it is, but the whole perispirit have the senses. There is not one specific organ for each one of the senses. How that works, I don't know.
Wow, that's really something. Thank you.
Mhm.
But again, we have to remind ourselves that, if you read Nosso Lar or any of the books of André Luiz, we in the spiritual world, we have that identity of our physical body so strong with us that likely in the spiritual, if I discard tomorrow when somebody tells me to close my eyes, I'll close my eyes and say, what do you see? Well, likely I'll say, I see nothing, my eyes are closed. Again, is an idea of identity, how we identify ourselves. Until we are free of all those limitations, so to say.
Physical body.
Can we volitate? Yes. How long did it take for André Luiz to be able to volitate? Well, it was like the fourth book or so already after Nosso Lar that was able to actually volitate freely, or the end of Nosso Lar by already, but with assistance then. Can we walk through a wall? Yes. I want to see you discarnate and now and a month from later you walk through a wall. So the identity of our physical body is so strong that imposes tremendous limitations to us, even though the perispirit sees with the whole perispirit and smell with the whole perispirit. There is not a sensory organ specific for each senses. We do believe that it does. That's why in when you do the gospel at home, it is suggested that we speak out loud. Don't only use thoughts, because spirits come to visit, participate in the meetings, and needs to hear it because they are so conditioned, or we are so conditioned to our senses being attached to some specific organs that they are not ready yet to receive our thoughts without us speaking. I know it poses a lot of questions. I have the same questions, but I don't have an answer. How is that? How that we have the whole perispirit receive all the senses without any specific organ? It's complicated.
Yeah, you're right.
And yet, the perispirit, and that is where things complicate to me. The perispirit is the instrument that will make the next physical body, and the perispirit will imprint um, anomalies to specific organs that is already imprinted in the perispirit. So it's very complicated. There's so many questions to be answered that the science of spiritism, we need to advance on that.
We have,
Example, André Luiz had surgery in the stomach in the spiritual world, right?
do we have material on quote unquote singing mediumship, something like that, that we can maybe read a bit more in depth?
There isn't much out there that I know, at least. It's interesting. When I was looking at this book, I was looking at the theory of mediumship, and I think that the mediums books perhaps is still the better one yet, the one most complete yet to talk about mediumship. You have the mechanism of mediumship, mechanism de mediunidade, extremely complex. Perhaps you answered lots of those questions if you can understand it.
Yeah, because I was thinking a lot in the last meeting towards the end when we were talking. Remember you asking me, and I was trying to describe, and that's why I kind of felt like I need to study more on this scene so I can uh, try to understand and formulate a thought on that. But yeah, it's I mean, yeah.
Well, I think as a medium, what you see is what you see. Even if you don't understand the mechanism of seeing, but what you see is what you see in the mediumistic trance. Understand the mechanism, understand how if the physiology, so to say, of the seeing, it is still what you see. Go through out there and see how do you see it to most people on the streets. They don't know how they see it. They don't know how the process of the eyes receiving those lights, converting to something else, and the brain interpreting and telling us what is being seen. Most people don't understand. It's very complex.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. One more, Elmo?
Well, what is it?
It's 8:34.
Yeah, I think one more. Yeah.
Okay. Does the seeing of spirits occur in the normal state or only during ecstasy? It can occur under perfectly normal conditions. However, those who see them are almost always in a special state which approaches ecstasy and which gives them a kind of second sight.
Okay, so the word ecstasy here, let's translate as trance, some kind of altered state of consciousness that can be extremely light, almost unperceivable, or extremely deep, that's almost in the patients that the person is in a state of coma. Can be, it varies a tremendous amount of degree. But again, the clairvoyance, some kinds of seeing experiences does not require a state of trance whatsoever. Very often will be, very often very unperceivable, even a light state of trance, but we will experience at one point or another the ability to see something of the spirit or the spiritual world, the spirit or something else, uh, without being in this state of trance or ecstasy. All right. We stop here. 1920 for next week. 128. Can someone make the final prayer for us?
Okay, I'll say the prayer, Elmo.
Thank you.
Okay. To our spiritual benefactors, our Father, Jesus Christ, all that have contributed here to this meeting tonight, exceptional learning and understanding, we give you thanks. We ask as we continue throughout the week with prayers for all our brothers and sisters that are going through so much on this planet Earth now, where we continue with prayers, focusing, sharing charity, sending out as much as we can our love and compassion. We pray, dear Father, that we continue throughout the week doing our studies, meeting as we are doing tonight, helping and guiding us, dear Lord. We're grateful for the opportunity of being here again. Thank you, dear Lord. And may we continue throughout the week with our studies and meet again next week, keeping ourselves focused with all that we have gathered here throughout our days as being here as spiritual beings. Thank you, dear Lord. And we ask that we continue to come back again next week and meet again throughout the weekend, Saturday and Sundays, to continue our studies. And with that in mind, we ask permission to close our meeting tonight. So be it.